should start by knowing where I'm going. Voltaire, WheezyWaiter, plugs.
You're going to have to help me with some of these French pronunciations.
I'm going to have to make up. I kind of vaguely remember them from the article, but...
When you say French stuff, even though it still might be wrong, at least sounds convincing, like to someone who doesn't know. But when I say it, it's very obvious I have no clue how to pronounce it.
What I do is I just throw on French accent. Yes.
It works.
Welcome to episode 5. This week we are talking all about Voltaire and how he became super rich by essentially rigging the lottery. This is actually one of my favorite... I know I say that about a lot of them, but this is a brilliant story, which I'm really enjoying getting into a conversation about. Before we get started, we should do our regular thing. If you are watching this on YouTube, please stop. I mean, don't stop if you're watching it on YouTube, but go over to the podcast and get the podcast feed, because that helps us out. This is a podcast. We would love it if you were listening on your phone rather than watching the weird visualization on YouTube. But still, the YouTube version, much more popular than our podcast.
Well, and at least on the plus side, I mean, for right now, we do actually make a little money on the YouTube version, whereas the podcast version costs us money.
That's true. I mean, if we weren't playing the long game here, we should be like, remember to watch on YouTube, and there'd be like an advert every 5 minutes.
Yeah, but yeah, if everyone switched to the podcast version, it would very much become all of a sudden how we wouldn't be losing money on the podcast.
Yes, it is a whole interesting thing how YouTube's fantastic. They can. I remember once when we started out, I vaguely ran the numbers on how much it would cost to host videos if we were doing it on Amazon's AWS. You know, they provide like hosting so you can feed different things, and it was an extraordinary amount of money. So YouTube hosting videos really makes all of this possible, and in exchange they take a nice slice of the ad revenue. But with podcasts, you do host it all yourself. You pay for all of the hosting. So hopefully we will be doing the occasional advert in the future. I know we've got kind of some stuff in the pipes to kind of that's tied into YouTube. More on that in the future. But you know, when you hear ads, that will be paying for this podcast and the surprisingly expensive business of feeding it to people's phones. What's coming up? So mention Voltaire. That's good. One of my this was great. We haven't actually done the interview as of this recording, but today we are talking to Craig of WheezyWaiter fame, and this was a guy who I was following on YouTube before I was even doing things on YouTube, which is kind of like a surreal privilege for me. So yeah, I assume that interview went swimmingly, and you'll enjoy it, and it'll be great. So yeah, there we go. We're recording that on Monday. Today is Friday. Lining up, week after that, Carl Smallwood, regular contributor to Today I Found Out, also host of Fact Fiend on YouTube, a channel you should subscribe to if you're listening to this.
He also, let's see, top tens. He used to write for top tens. Does he
still does?
For top tens?
I always like it when his articles come up, because they're really funny, and I'll have a good laugh while reading through those. He's
gotten quite good at this over the years. I think Today I Found Out though was his first online writing gig. I think I could be wrong. It might have been cracked, but I think it was the first regular writing gig anyway.
There you go. Yeah, Carl's a talented guy. Voltaire. Everyone's heard of him. I'm imagining most people listening to this have at least heard of Voltaire, the Enlightenment thinker. I see you've described the great Enlightenment thinker. Definitely qualifies as great Enlightenment thinker.
And like the king of the smart Alex.
King of the smart Alex. Indeed. Mm-hmm. But there's another story about Voltaire, which we're going to get into today, right?
Yeah, and it's one that I don't know why, like, you know, when you're trying to get students into Voltaire and stuff, a lot of students are like, you know, whatever, this old stuff, I don't want to read that or whatever. But I feel like this story is a great way to like, wait a minute, this is kind of an interesting guy. Like,
yeah. I always feel it's like one of those, if this happened today, it would be like, wow, anyone would think this is incredibly cool. If this happened today, I'd be like, all right, I guess this guy's like, this guy's pretty cool. He's pretty smart.
So we should probably say, so what did he do here? And maybe we should just hold off for the reveal. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's the reveal to say that basically he kind of worked out a way to rig the lottery. I don't think that really spoils the story, because we're going to get into that pretty quickly. But we can talk a little bit about Voltaire before we get into the fact like how he basically cheated his way to incredible wealth.
Yeah, and this was the key to his basically being able to be the great Enlightenment thinker. Without it, he probably would have ended up in prison just for indefinitely, or they would have just had him killed at some point. But because he rigged the lottery and he became insanely wealthy, he just got exiled and things like that, as the wealthy did back then.
Yes. But I mean, he didn't really come from like a rough background. I see, like I was reading through the notes for this thing, and it's like he was from like a fairly well-off family. I like how this low-ranking noble, his mother was from a low-ranking noble family, and it's like, wow, it is noble ranks and stuff.
Yeah, very, very minor-ranking noble family, not super wealthy or anything, and his father was a minor treasury official. So they were kind of upper middle class, you might consider at the time, and somewhat well connected with the more wealthy as well.
Yeah, which today you kind of imagine like this is the sort of person who would, like in my mind, who would go off to Oxford and Cambridge and study classics and then go on and become a great Enlightenment thinker without having to work out how to rig what we would call like the national lottery.
Yeah, but instead, like his father really wanted him to be a lawyer, and so he kind of went to school for that, and he ended up getting a job as like a clerk or something like that, and was pursuing law at the time. But he didn't want to be a lawyer; he wanted to be a writer, and so he completely just went against his father's wishes, abandoned that profession, and decided to be a writer, and promptly got in all sorts of trouble because he liked to poke fun at very wealthy and very high-ranking nobles and things, and make fun of them in satire, and so this resulted in him, in the early parts of his career there, getting exiled from Paris. He also got imprisoned in the Bastille for 11 months before he eventually convinced them to let him be just exiled to Britain. And so eventually in Britain, he eventually got to come back.
Wait, do you know what he went to? Do you know what he went to jail for? Was this just one of his his critical pieces of some person who's probably too important and he shouldn't be writing badly about?
Well, actually, this one I was going to save it for the bonus facts, but at the very end. But
we can get into it in the bonus facts. We can tease it. We can be like, remember to listen to the end of this episode because you'll find out why Voltaire went to prison.
So for people, we're doing bonus facts at the end now. So
they're always so popular on the YouTube channel that we thought we'd introduce them here. But okay, so let's go back. So the Bastille prison, we'll save that for the end. We'll take it back to the beginning of his kind of rebellious career. And so he was exiled to England.
Yeah, and then he eventually was allowed to come back to Paris. And this is where his life sort of changed for the much better when he went to a dinner party held by one Charles de Fay in 1728. There he met a mathematician named Charles Marie de la Condamine, and the mathematician had a great idea. So at the time, France was really struggling because the government was struggling to raise money because they had to. So the decline of the French economy in the 1720s resulted in their bonds that they were selling, they had to lower the interest rate of them, and the result of that was that then nobody wanted to buy the bonds, and it was a major problem.
It's nice that it's like 300 years later and governments and people are still having the same problems that they did back in the day.
So there was a clerk, or no, what was he? No, not a clerk, a deputy finance minister for France.
Okay, so not a clerk.
Yeah.
We've established that the deputy finance minister for France, if he was alive, he'd be turning over in his grave. I wasn't a clerk.
He was actually quite successful at his job. Is Michel Robert Le Pieter de Forte? Well, I don't know.
Yeah. Just a disclaimer for the rest of this episode. There are a lot of French names which we are going to butcher. I could just say it in a French accent. Michel Robert Le Pieter de Forte.
See, that sounds way better than anything I could come up with.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, he actually was known to have done a really good job at his time as deputy finance minister, but this was not one of his better ideas. He decided that they would issue a lottery, right? And the idea behind this would raise the value of existing bonds, encourage the sale of new bonds, and earn some extra money for the government at the same time.
This sounds like a good idea. Just to go on a slight tangent here, because again, another parallel from the 1720s to today, we have something in the UK called premium bonds, which are similar to this. I don't own any of these things, but you can buy them. There's no interest, but you get entered into a lottery. So I think you can buy it used to be like £30,000 worth of premium bonds, and you'd hold them and you can go cash them in with the government at any time, but also you get like an entry for every pound that you have or whatever the value is into a lottery, and there's like £1 million prize every month and all of this stuff. And these have been around for ages. I think it's quite a good way that the government raises money because people, they pay less overall. People love a lottery, and this obviously wasn't a good idea for a particular reason. Yeah,
this was what you describe is very similar to his idea, but the difference was, so his idea was to anyone who owned a bond, you could take that bond, and for 1/1000th of the bond's value, you could buy a lottery ticket. So this is the way the government would make money on it, and the winner of the lottery would then get the face value of the winning bond ticket, and on top of that, they get a jackpot of 500,000 livres. Is that how you say that?
I have no idea. I mean, before the euro, they had the francs. I have no idea when they had the livre.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, any French people.
Livre?
I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just like, this is like how I imagine a French accent.
It sounds to my American ears, it sounds way better than anything I say.
To me, it sounds like the sort of sarcastic thing you might see on Monty Python when someone's trying to do a French accent. Oh, so 500,000 livres, but how much is that? That's like 500,000 somethings. That means not a lot to me.
There's not really a good way to translate that one to, like, some of these things you can just go into a currency converter and it's quite easy. It comes up with a reasonably accurate of what that is in modern dollars. But this one not so much the case. But it's basically, by buying power, it's about $6.2 million today. And for another reference, like if you wanted to buy gold at the time, it was about $6.4 million worth of gold.
Okay.
And then
so
on the other,
a small amount of money.
No, it's definitely, if you're
it's
reasonably,
not the Powerball or anything, but
no, but you're set for life if you're not too crazy with your money. And to another reference, and this one maybe shows the other end of it. So if you want to do it by labor, by like how much you could buy, how much labor could you buy for the average wage of people?
Oh, this is going to be higher because people used to not get paid so much.
No, this is way higher. So in modern day terms, if you were to buy that same amount of labor, it would be $121 million. So
whoa,
this was either way you look at it, whether the lower end or the higher end, or the person is set for life basically with just one win. So this seemed like a great way. People with a bond.
Do you know why? Like, I mean, this is just something I've always thought when we're making the videos. Like, some stuff you can do like 1960s dollars to today's dollars is quite easy. And you can be like, oh, okay, so, I always think like when they're talking about Mad Men, it's basically you can add a zero onto the end, or it's like 8 times. And I always think like, oh, okay, there's when you're watching like historic TV shows. Why is it so much harder when you get into like really old currencies? Can't it just be done in like a similar way?
Yeah, well, the problem is in like 1960, you can kind of look at the labor and you can look at the inflation in between very easily, right? It's not, and especially when it's in the same currency, but even when it's a different currency, you can usually, with most currencies, translate it pretty good. But when you're going way back then, I mean, the world was just so different with the way things were done. And, like you said, how much people get paid and stuff like that. So
it's like you could have loads of servants and a reasonable amount of gold. And today it would be like you could probably have more gold than people because people, labor got really expensive.
Yeah. But I feel like that, like $6 million, $6.4 million.
I wouldn't say no. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it'd be like
like that's what it seems, somewhere in that ballpark. So you're just going to be really wealthy if you win this. So back to the party.
Yes.
The
dinner party. We're still at the dinner party. Okay, good.
Yeah. Condamine says to Voltaire, Voltaire's struggling financially, as writers are wont to do when they're starting out, especially back then.
Especially in prison exiled ones who like poking fun at the nobility.
Yeah.
Condamine not great for business.
Condamine was reasonably well off, better than Voltaire, but still, he wasn't like insanely wealthy or anything like that. And he, being a mathematician and scientist, he very quickly saw the major flaw in this whole scheme was that you could easily just buy. So it was 1/1000th of the value of the bond, right? But the bond could be for various amounts. So if you had a bond for 100,000 livres or whatever, and then on the other end of the spectrum you had one for 1,000 livres. That 1/1000th, that ticket for the smaller one is going to cost you 1 livre, and the other it's going to cost you 100.
Oh, so you should just get loads of small bonds.
Exactly. You get the small bonds, and then what happens is you just collect. And if you collect enough of them, about how many are out there, and you can collect enough, you can be reasonably sure you're going to win that lotto.
Oh,
and then,
wow. Okay.
You just have to basically crunch the numbers. How many do you have to acquire? And remember, these were low value at the time, lower than their face value. And so it's just doing the math. How much do you have to acquire to make it reasonably good odds? And then you crunch all the numbers, and then you play it over and over again. And then in the long term, you're going to win enough to make it all happen. Now, neither Condamine nor Voltaire had enough money to make this happen. It was perfectly, the math was there. It's a perfectly good scheme. It's going to work in the long term. You might not win the first time, but if you play it, keep playing it.
Is this legal? Like, there's no rules against this?
It's shady. Definitely a little shady, but it wasn't technically illegal, which will come into play later. This was an important fact and probably helped them get investors. So Condamine said, his idea, but Voltaire had the connections. Voltaire was very charismatic. A lot of people, he knew a lot of higher ups and stuff who had money. And, so Condamine says, you go find people to invest in this. We'll make a syndicate. It'll be great. It's going to work out. And so they do this. And they did have one more problem, is that there's a limited number of notaries who could give the lotto tickets, when you buy them. And So if you have one person, Voltaire, coming in and being like, yeah, I want 10,000 lotto tickets, that's going to be a little suspicious time and time again as he comes each round of the lotto. He's coming in and doing the same thing.
Especially when he's winning, like regularly.
Yes. Yeah. So Voltaire had to then find one of the notaries who happened to, be open to the idea of scheming with the syndicate and for, I'm sure, a cut of the profits.
So Voltaire's role in this is basically everyone likes Voltaire and he's got like loads of friends.
Yeah. And he was very charismatic, very clever, he was one of those people who just people like him, Yeah. Well, I should say until he's writing satire about them and then they hate him, which was a theme throughout his life where a lot of people who once liked him and were big fans, then they come to not like him after he starts, writing satire about them. So.
Oh, Voltaire. Okay, so Voltaire brings all of his temporary friends into this scheme.
Yeah. And so they all get together, the syndic, they pitch in the money where they have it, and then they do it, and it totally works for about 2 years. They're just like continually winning the lotto.
Wow.
This massive prize, and then divvying up the prizes among themselves. And so the problem is Voltaire being Voltaire, like he couldn't help himself seemingly. So when you turn in the tickets, a lot of people would like write on the back, you write your name and all that, but then they would write little good luck messages and whatnot. But Voltaire would instead, he would write like phrases mocking the government, and he would also do things like he even like partially giving away a scheme where he wrote like, here's to the good idea of Marie de la Condamine, and then writes a fake name. And so after a while, the officials started catching on, like this seems like the same people doing this over and over, and so they did, and because of the things he was writing, it was not hard at all to figure out who was doing it. And so the government got on, and then they took him to court. They said, you're rigging this. This isn't okay with us. And so, but ended up, because there was nothing actually technically illegal about what they were doing, it was just because it was a poorly designed lottery system. They ended up getting away with it, but the end result was, after the court ruling where they got away with it, the French government canceled the lottery from there. But in the 2 years in the interim, Voltaire himself, his own share, this is just his share, which is a small percentage of the total pot they won, was estimated to be about 500,000 livres of
that's the same amount as we talked about
money
before. So like the 6 million
it was
gold.
Roughly. Yeah. So he was set now.
Okay,
he was fine. And so now both Voltaire and Condamine were now quite wealthy, and this was actually a pretty crazy thing for both of them, because Condamine, you might not have heard of him, but he actually had some quite interesting things he did with that money afterwards, which so I guess we'll talk about him, and then we'll talk about what Voltaire did with
my understanding from like videos we've made in the past about people who win lots of money suddenly, or acquire lots of money suddenly, is it all goes terribly wrong. So I was quite surprised, like, spoiler alert, it doesn't go terribly wrong for these guys. I mean, we all know who Voltaire is, and this other guy got up to some notable stuff. My expectation, based on like my modern understanding of people winning the lottery, is they're probably going to go bankrupt after some spell with drugs. That seems to be like an often repeated problem. Or massively
murdered by a family member, or
yeah, it doesn't end well. Usually.
So usually, but back then it was for Condamine. I mean, this was a brilliant guy. He was extremely eccentric, which I was reading up on him, and he's worthy of his own article in and of himself, because he's just like this really like ultra inquisitive about every little thing, and a little bit there was like some writings about him when you first encounter him, like if you don't know him, it almost like he's mocking you, because he's just like question after question after question, everything in the way he would talk and stuff was just, he comes across as almost like just really weird and mocking. But then once you get to know him, you realize he's just, he just wants to know everything. This is just who he is, and he's a brilliant mind. And so his insatiable, he did that. Now he has the money to do whatever he wants, and so he just insatiably curious about everything. So he did science, just science everywhere. So some of the notable things he did was he led a trip to South America to attempt to measure accurately the circumference of the Earth, as well as determine if the Earth was a perfect sphere or not. This was and beyond that, also most of the educated didn't think it was a perfect sphere, but they still needed to prove it. And they also wanted to know. So like Newton thought that the Earth probably flattened at the poles, and then Descartes thought they probably flattened at the equator, and so this was partially what they were going. They wanted to find all this stuff out, and so he goes and he measures that, and they determined Newton was correct. And
I love this guy. It's like, I'm super rich. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm just going to figure this out.
Yeah. And this was not a quick journey, obviously. This was he actually left France and didn't come back for like 10 years because he was, traveling. Part of it, there was a war going on, and so he was uncertain whether his ship could get back to France after the few years he spent in South America. So he went to Amsterdam actually for a while and did some science there and did some traveling and stuff. But so beyond that, while he was in South America, he mapped the Amazon River. He was the first scientific exploration of that region. He also, because of his work with the measurement of the Earth, he helped define the length of the meter when it was eventually established, and first scientific paper on rubber, and also helped introduce rubber to Europe, which was a big deal. And then he came up while he was also in South America. There's a tree bark that has this thing called quinine in it, and they knew you could use it for treating malaria, but they didn't really. He basically did a lot of research in it and found a way of like refining it to make it a very effective treatment for malaria. And then another thing, he helped champion inoculating people against smallpox, which was, there was a big stigma against this, but this was actually a pretty effective way. And it would be, I think it was about a half century later that they finally came up with a really effective way of inoculating people with cowpox.
Did he go on to work on the Apollo program? Is there anything this guy did not do?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, he did. He basically spent the entire rest of his life just traveling around studying just whatever he came in contact with. And he was quite interesting. And
not just
one of the more interesting
he
things.
seems like super successful at everything he does.
Yeah, and it was just a brilliant mind when he focused that, so focused as he was. And then he did, by modern standards, this is a little weird. I think even in his time, this was a little weird. He had to get dispensation from the Pope, or permission from the Pope to do this. But at 55 years old, he married his 25-year-old niece, Charlotte Boisoire de Estueli.
Charlotte Bazier d'Estoile. In 1756, I see. That's slightly odd.
Yeah.
So she married her uncle.
But as you'll see later with Voltaire, this is another way they sort of mirrored each other. But
are we talking blood relative here?
Yeah.
Or is it like his wife's
sister's?
Oh no, it's
his sister's daughter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's odd. People used to marry their cousins all the time, but
but the age gap also was a little weird. And but at the time, part of his motivation was his sister was widowed, and she didn't have the money to give her daughter a good dowry, so there was no way for her to marry anyone of sufficient wealth. So she wasn't. So he married her instead. He was quite wealthy, and
instead of marrying her, he could have just given her some money.
Apparently, they had a great relationship. She was incredibly intelligent, apparently, and they worked well together.
There you go.
And so, yeah, even his death, though, it was interesting. So talk about his eccentricities in his death. So he dies in 1774 at the age of 73. But he didn't quite have to die at this point. It was a scientific experiment.
73 is quite old back in the day, right?
And this is what he thought. And this is what he supposedly told the surgeon who was going to work on him. So he had a hernia.
Okay.
And the surgeon, he found this young doctor who thought he had a way to treat hernias, like this new way that would work. And the doctor was like, no, I'm not going to perform the surgery on you, though, because you're too old. Like, you're definitely going to die if I do this. Yeah. And Le Condamine, do you want to read this quote for me? Where he supposedly told the doctor?
Yeah, okay. That is just the reason. If you succeed, the experiment will make your reputation and establish a precious discovery for mankind. If I come to grief, my age and my infirmities will be the cause, and I only risk 2 or 3 years of life. I will be operated. I should have done that in a French accent. I will be operated.
And further in his eccentricities, so during the procedure, he supposedly kept interrupting the surgeon and making him stop, and just so he could ask him.
Oh, he's conscious. Of course, he's conscious. It's like the 18th century.
Yeah, he's conscious. Asking him what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And just like completely just curious. He wants to know what's going on. And he did survive the procedure initially, and the hernia was apparently fixed.
Okay.
But then he died a couple days later from, of course, infection.
Oh.
Yeah, that was the thing back then.
1774, we're talking solidly before anesthetics, solidly before painkillers and stuff, right?
Nothing effective. Okay. Nothing like we have today, so yeah.
When did they start cracking poppies open and being like, if we eat this works pretty well? I mean, that's like a fairly basic, like, eat this poppy and it will kill you. It's basically, like morphine in there and stuff or whatever.
Opium. I think they used to use stuff like alcohol and stuff like that, but yeah, nothing. We've done
did,
articles
yeah.
on this before.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall
when exactly they came up with all this, but yeah, I'm completely blanking on the time frame here. So
But you could be relatively certain he's in some amount of distress while he's having this hernia operated on. He's just like, "Oh, Doc, what are you doing there? What are you stitching there? What's that?" And it's like, Condamine, be quiet.
Yeah, so yeah, completely willing to risk the last couple of years of his life, just because he could have lived with the hernia, but just let's see. This is a new procedure. It could be groundbreaking. I could die, but whatever. I'm old.
Wow. And dying of infection, not exactly a great way to go.
Back to Voltaire. So Voltaire, he takes his lottery winnings, which he's already wealthy now, but he's not like Mr. Burns wealthy at this point.
Okay.
So he ends up, because he has all these connections, he's very friendly with a lot of people. He basically did a lot of insider trading and
totally legal back
which,
in the day, I'm imagining.
Yeah, totally legal back then, not so much now. And he did that, and he made himself insanely wealthy, just where he could now do whatever, like say whatever he wanted. He had the protection of his wealth. No more could, we'll talk about it in the bonus facts, how he got thrown in the Bastille. But yeah, so this wealth shielded him from serious repercussions for the things he had to say, so he could now say whatever he wanted. And this was a unique position he had. There was other, Enlightenment thinkers and things that we probably have never heard of that said things and then promptly got thrown in prison for the rest of their life, or this sort of thing. But he could say whatever he wanted, no risk really, other than occasionally being exiled or whatever.
It'd be funny if that's how it worked today. Like if you were super rich and you said something like bad, or you committed some sort of crime, it'd just be like, you're too rich, so we're just going to send you to like England. It'd be like nowadays England would be like, it doesn't, guys, stop sending your criminals here, this is weird.
I mean, there's still the advantage, of course, you can get better lawyers and they can drag things out and this sort of thing, but not quite like then, where you could just I'm gonna go to England for a couple of years, and then eventually you'll all be no longer as offended as you once were, and then I'll come back.
So he gets Mr. Burns wealthy through all this insider trading.
Yeah, so first he basically helps rig the lottery, and then he does insider trading. And interesting guy. Going back to his following in Condamine's footsteps again, he had a lot of mistresses over his lifetime and love interests and things, including one that died during childbirth, which I assume was his child. But that was kind of devastated him. But then his niece, his again,
no, he didn't.
Also as with Condamine, his niece was the daughter of his sister, and he actually initially he paid for a dowry for her so she could get married, and she married this guy named Nicholas Charles Dennis, but then he died a few years later, and so now left, her father was dead and she had no money, so he took her on as a housekeeper, and then at some point over the subsequent years they became much closer, and they never actually got married because I think you needed special permission to marry your niece. Even then, they never actually got married, but they lived together they presented themselves as a married couple. And when he died, interestingly, he died in 1778. He literally left her his heart, like his physical heart, and
pickled or,
and brain.
Or something. And brain?
Yeah, and brain. Yeah, exactly. They boiled it in alcohol.
Wow, can you imagine reading that will? It's like, to my beloved weird niece / part wife.
And she wrote some sort of, I can't remember the thing, but she wrote some sort of thing in the box. She kept it in on her little mantelpiece with like pictures of people he liked around. She had a whole like little shrine to him with his heart there. And she wrote something, it was something to the effect like his spirit goes everywhere, but his heart lies here or whatever. So, they were a happy couple apparently, even though, again, he was way, way older than her and it was his niece, which is a little weird.
Happy. A little bit creepy on multiple factors here. And this was unusual back in the day. So it's just it's quite the coincidence that Condamine and Voltaire both married their blood relative nieces.
Yeah.
There you go.
Apparently, it worked out. And to be fair for the women, I mean, you have Condamine, who's really wealthy, and Voltaire, who's really wealthy and famous. And, at the time, when your husband dies and you have no money, you don't really have a lot of other options when you're back then. If you're
no, I mean, it's definitely more creepy from the older man side of things rather than the poor desperate niece who doesn't have any money side of things. But they seemed happy in their relationships, so
Edgar Allan Poe was another one. Had the same sort of thing. A little weird. Only
I thought it was his cousin. It was his niece.
No, it was his cousin. But the weirder part was she was like 12 at the time.
Oh. Oh,
he
yeah,
was like 20.
young.
He was in his early 20s. It's a little odd, but that definitely wouldn't fly today.
No,
Even back then, it was a little weird, and they thought that a deal had to be worked out with the parents because everyone did think that was a little weird, and you can tell that even they thought it was a little weird because at first they didn't present themselves that way as a couple until she was a little bit older.
Edgar Allan Poe and company.
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe was
Wow.
But they had a incredibly happy relationship when and when she died, she was thought to be the inspiration for a lot of his sad love poems like The Raven and whatnot. So
well, there you go.
Weird, but
yes, yes, indeed.
Moving away from the creepy to slightly less creepy.
Yes,
is the
let's do that.
She kept his heart and then passed it on to her.
This is still less creepy. We've gone from really creepy to slightly less creepy.
Yeah, this is less creepy than a 20-some-year-old with the 12-year-old. So
yes, it is.
So she keeps the heart. She passes on to the heirs, and now you can actually see it still to this day. About a century later, it was donated to the National Library of France, who had the heart. And at some point, there was like a weird smell issue with it, and they had to sort of take the thing down and fix that issue. I assume it was decomposing a bit, but yeah, you can still go there and see his heart.
Wow, that would be, speaking of things we want to work on in the future, mini documentaries. We should go smell Voltaire's heart.
Yeah. Apparently it doesn't smell anymore. I think they keep it encased in something.
They should just have it out on a chopping block or something.
There's the heart slightly decomposed or whatever. But yeah, as for his brain, you might be where did his brain go? And nobody knows. At some point it was kept by the heirs for a while, and then at some point there was some sort of auction or something, and it got included with an auction with some furniture, and nobody knows who bought it and what happened to the brain after that. So that's been lost to history, unfortunately. Otherwise,
I've got 1,000 Swiss francs, 2,000 Swiss francs, this beautiful set of chairs and a brain, 3,000 Swiss francs. Swiss francs, French francs even.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is kind of funny because Voltaire, of course, was quite, he critical of the French government, and yet they inadvertently managed to fund his entire career. And I think that's just there's a kind of a funny irony in that. And without that, we probably wouldn't remember him because he would have probably ended up in prison somewhere and, never heard from again.
That French clerk/finance minister really dropped the ball on this one. Although now we have Voltaire. So.
It worked out in his great works, which are quite fun. I mean, his satire is great. If for people who haven't gone and read some, he actually has something crazy like 100 and some. He has so many letters, like 20,000 letters or something, that have been bound in like 100 and some volumes that you can just go read and you have like everything from love letters to his thoughts on this and that, whatever political thing, his thoughts on philosophy. It's all, you can go read them. They're online.
He was insanely prolific, right? I mean, just with everything.
Just writing on everything, and great sense of humor, great, satire, extremely intelligent with what he wrote. And so, yeah, you can even read the love letters to his niece.
Well, there you go. Yeah. We're back to creepy. It's a real pleasure to start today's interview with someone who I was watching on YouTube before I did YouTube. I think Craig Benzine, who is known online as WheezyWaiter, his YouTube channel, and by Craig Benzine, I suppose, on various other projects that he works on YouTube that we're going to get into today, was I think YouTube started for me watching Ali G clips that had been ripped off the BBC or whoever made Ali G, and then YouTubers began making their own content, and then I discovered people like Craig, and then somehow a few years later I'm doing this myself and I'm talking to Craig with Davin's also here. It's quite surreal. Welcome, Craig. It's really great to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you, and keep saying nice things about me. Flattery will get you everywhere.
Well, I will begin then by saying when you commented on a video of mine, you probably don't remember because you comment on a bunch of people's videos as it goes, but that comment was a highlight for me because I was like, oh look, there he is commenting on a thing that I made.
Which video was that?
I don't even remember. Know. It was so long ago. It was like maybe 2 years ago. But I was like,
it was something on one of your vlogs or something. Like, yeah.
Huh. I have no I have no idea what that was.
It was a big deal for me.
It might have been one of my clones actually that commented.
Understand. These things can happen in your position with so many clones.
Right.
So for those of you who don't know, Craig has multiple clones who help him with his YouTube channel, WheezyWaiter, which if you plug into YouTube, you will find. What else? what else are you working on now, Craig? I know you've done things for PBS and all over the show, but it's kind of by way of an introduction. Do you want to tell me a little bit about where you sit on YouTube today?
Well, I'm kind of still doing the same thing. I've been doing WheezyWaiter for 10 and a half years now, and I probably have I don't know, I haven't checked the count yet, but 1,600 some videos on that channel. That's mainly still what I do. I'm still sometimes I do that every weekday, sometimes I do it twice a week. I've been changing up my schedule, figuring it out as YouTube figures itself out. But I've also now I have another channel called The Good Stuff that I started 4 or 5 years ago with a group of friends, and it's more of an educational type channel. And also sometimes it's educational, sometimes it's more personal growth type channel. I ran a marathon for that channel, and we kind of documented the whole process. I went skydiving, flew with help, flew a small airplane. Basically, that channel has made me a lot healthier as a human being. And on that channel, we also went to Area 51, the old biosphere. If you remember from the 90s, we did that. So that channel's still going on, but I'm more hands off on that. My friends are working on that. I'm doing a couple podcasts occasionally, one with my wife called Story Not Story, which we tell bedtime stories we make up on the spot, and a movie review one with my friend Jake. Just a couple of dudes talking about movies called Movied. Nice. And I've hosted lots of other things.
Nice. We will link to this stuff in the show notes for this. Also, we put this on YouTube as well. I know you do. You put your I've seen your bedside stories one on YouTube, so we also upload this there, and people can go across, and it's all hopefully as easy to access as possible. One thing when I was doing this interview, I liked, and YouTube makes it really easy. You can go back on people's things and put the videos sorted by reverse chronological order. So I went all the way back, and was it your first YouTube video? Was Apple Picker that, or was that not? Because that's a bizarre video.
Wait, what's that one called?
Apple Picker. It's a bunch of half-naked dudes in a shower with apples in their mouths. I gotta ask, what's it about?
No, I don't think that was my first one. Actually, that was probably made before YouTube existed, but I did a bunch of videos with my band. I'm also in a band, which I didn't mention,
Driftless
Pony Club. Yeah, and we did a bunch of weird, very, very weird sketch video. I guess you could call them sketches around right around or right before YouTube actually came out, and we were putting them up on our own website just for people to watch, and one of those is Apple Picker. That wasn't the first one, but that was one of them. And they're all very weird. I think the goal was just to be as weird as possible.
It definitely qualifies.
Yeah, and that channel is called Sam Bone Jr. And that was that channel still exists. I think it might be actually the band is called Driftless Pony Club, and I think we changed the name of the channel to Driftless Pony Club. But there's those old weird videos still exist if you want to check those out.
It is fun to go back at that reverse chronological thing. Just makes it so easy. I mean, I hate it as myself as a creator, because people can just go back and put it in reverse chronological order and see your first failings.
Yeah. Well, I think those were a wild success personally. I mean, it was we were just trying to be weird. That was back when you just uploaded things in obscurity, and you didn't expect I didn't expect. We didn't have any idea of what YouTube was because it didn't exist yet.
You didn't expect someone in 2018 to be going back and looking. And it's in, it's old because it's in that, what was before 16 by 9, 4 by 8 or 6 by some, I want to say a 6 by 4, but it's not that.
I forgot.
16 by 9?
No, 4 by 3, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 4 by 3.
4 by 3.
4 by 3, yeah.
It's old when those black bars are at the side nowadays.
So you were doing these videos back then, and then you started putting them on YouTube. At what point did this start to become a business for you? Something you're hey, I could do this and make a living at this?
Well, I think around 2007 is when that's when I started. 2007 is it when I started WheezyWaiter. I came across Zay Frank, if you know who that is. He's now CEO of BuzzFeed Video, but he back in 2005 did a video every weekday for a year. He was basically one of the first ever to do something like a vlog. My format from the beginning was very similar to what he did, maybe a little weirder, a little more humor. A little more emphasis on humor, less on anything else. but and I saw his videos and I'm like, I think this is awesome. I'm really entertained by this. I think I can do this. I just started in 2007, but it took... I had 100 videos, and I had 32 subscribers. because I wasn't actually paying much attention to YouTube. I was putting stuff up on Blip as well as YouTube. Because that's where Zay Frank put stuff up on, was up Blip.
What was Blip? I missed that one.
Yeah, I totally don't know what Blip is.
Blip.tv. It doesn't exist anymore. It did exist for a while though. It
was a blip in the history of
things. Now looking back, that was a bad name for it. No, I think it was, at least in the first 5-6 years of YouTube, it was also around. But then I started paying attention to YouTube, and there was this blog called YouTube Reviewed, which was a small blog, but a lot of people who had subscribers read it. And I messaged them, and they're like, "Hey, we like your videos," and they did a whole article on me, and then some other YouTubers found it and tweeted about me, and then I started to finally get subscribers after like 2 years of doing it with 100 videos. And then over the course of that 2000, I also like moved from being a waiter to working for a web development company doing video because of my videos. So I actually had a job doing video because of online video already. But it was still a boring office job, and I wanted to do YouTube full time. So I continued doing it, and then over the course of a year, I gained like 16,000 subscribers. And then I gave an ultimatum. The beginning of, I think it was 2010. It might have been 2009. I gave an ultimatum. I said, if I can get 100,000 subscribers at the end of January, I will do a video every weekday the rest of the year. I'll do one every weekday in January, and if at the end I get 100,000, I'll do one for the rest of the year, every weekday. Some people promoted me because of that and tried to get me to there, but I ended up getting like 40,000 or something by the end of January. So like more than doubled my subscribers. So I just continued doing it anyway. Nice. and then halfway through the year, I was at around 70,000 subscribers, and then I quit my job and did it full time. So that was 2010, I think, and I've been doing it full time since. And
nice.
And then it grew a lot through 2012, and then it was that was kind of the peak, and then it's been like kind of a decline since then, but still very much able to do this full time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And when did the other stuff come on your radar? I mean, the good stuff is something, I enjoyed, particularly when you were doing it, still enjoy it today. Is that something that came about because, pretty obvious question, it's you got to have been doing your successful channel and they were like, hey, you want to do something with you started it then? Because was it in collaboration with PBS originally, or was it something you kicked off and then they came on later? It
was actually in collaboration with Google. Google, they were doing their premium channels where they gave people a bunch of. I wasn't a premium channel. It didn't get nearly that much money. They were giving out like $1 million budgets to people to start YouTube channels. Like that's how Crash Course started. That's how SciShow started. That's how I believe Rhett and Link, Good Mythical Morning, how SourceFed, all of those, they started because YouTube gave them money. Google gave them money to start channels. Gave like Philip DeFranco money, gave Hank Green and John Green money. Did you know that?
No, I had no idea. I just wrote it. We've got this the Google Drive thing where you can share a document, and I just wrote, whoa, and bolded it. I had no idea. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that was like all over the place back then. I mean, I feel like an old man now. That's common knowledge to me, but it's not to you guys. Yeah, there were a lot of channels that started. A lot of them ended up failing. But like SourceFed, what lasted a while, but did eventually fail recently. But like Crash Course is going strong, and SciShow and all those. My channel was like a smaller version of that. It was like it was more like we're trying out new formats and we want to see how they work. It's sort of like a study they were doing. I offered up the idea of the good stuff, which was, This American Life?
The podcast?
Yeah, the podcast.
Yeah.
I know you're not American. Well, at least Simon isn't. But
This American Life definitely ranks, in the top 10, even in the UK, I imagine.
Yeah. I wanted to do something that was like the format of that for YouTube. So that's how it started. It was like a series of 5 videos around a topic and put into a playlist. And so they gave me not a lot of money, but a tiny budget to start that. So then I got my friends together and we started that channel, and it did fine for a few years, but then they weren't gonna fund it anymore. So then I talked to PBS, and they funded it for PBS Digital funded it for a year. And nice. we did. That was probably the as far as it was the best budget we had for videos on that channel for a while. And then they're no longer funding it, so now it's just us and Patreon basically.
Yeah.
And it's much looser. That format doesn't exist anymore. It's just sort of whatever we find interesting and we're going to do a video about. But yeah, still going on.
Yeah.
Everything, every answer I'm going to give is going to be long and complicated. Sorry.
It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, they're the best types of answers.
Yeah,
The worst ones where it's like, so what have you done with what was the good stuff? It was a show. So
yeah.
Rather, I mean, you speak there like about doing the things that you know what you find interesting and going out to make a video about it. I think like our channel sort of started taking off last year. I think was when things started going well, and now it's what we found. I mean, we haven't got any got a backer behind us or anything, but having the money coming in from that is like so cool. We can go and do things like we're going to VidCon. Well, David's leaving in like an hour and a half, and I'm leaving in 2 days because it's a little closer for me. David's coming in a day early to get over his jet lag. Sorry,
VidCon?
the one in Amsterdam.
I thought you were going a little early to VidCon, Anaheim, guys. Jeez,
gotta get acclimated,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a really long flight.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
And just cool how we can, now that we can go do that, and we've got like two sort of we keep calling them mini documentaries, and people in the comments are like they're making a drinking game on this podcast about how many times Simon says mini documentary in an episode. So I have to bring it up.
Yes, I'll play along.
Just how many times we can mention it, but it's so great to be able to go and do this stuff, and I think that's one of the best things, at least for me, about being a YouTuber, getting to go and do all this fun stuff.
Well, when you get to be my age and doing this for 10 years, conferences like Playlist and VidCon become like family reunions. It's like a lot of my friends I only see at these conferences, and it's really meeting people who watch and then seeing friends who make videos is the best thing about it. Is the best thing about those conferences.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
I think like this will be my first one. I've never been to the one in
me as well.
Yeah.
I've been to 10 of them.
Wow.
What was it like?
Is that all of them? Is that all of them?
I don't know if it was 10. I've been to all of them. I don't remember I don't know how many it is. I haven't been to the ones outside of Anaheim. I've just been to the Anaheim ones. I won't be at Amsterdam. Sorry.
It's a disappointment, but no, I'm looking forward to it nonetheless, despite you not being there, but slightly less now. Just kind of, you mentioned there, YouTube friends and stuff. You've done a lot of collaborations with different people. I always, you've done stuff. I saw your on your WheezyWaiter channel where you were touring with your bands and the famous Hank Green. Speaking of VidCon, there he was in your things. When you were doing these collaborations, how did you build these relationships, and how did you meet with these people? Was it just kind of being there at the early VidCons? Were they kind of a smaller affair back then? Because now it's like, I don't know how many people go to Anaheim. It's got to be in the thousands or tens of thousands now. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's tens of thousands.
Yes.
It started with, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 was the first VidCon, or maybe it was even less than that.
Yeah,
and it was a tiny affair, and it was awesome. It's gotten really big and confusing now. It's still great. It's still worth it for me to go to it anyway. How did I meet these people? I guess all these people I collaborate with. I think it's probably because it was a smaller, tighter knit community at the beginning of YouTube. I suppose everyone kind of knew who everyone was. I remember going to the first VidCon and being so excited to see people that I knew on YouTube, and then even more excited that they knew who I was. It was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah.
When I first met Freddie W, he does a lot of like computer animated stuff. He knew who I was, and that was the most exciting thing. That was like the most exciting day of my life. I was like, oh my god. But I think, with Hank and John Green, the Vlogbrothers who started VidCon, I'd actually known them since before VidCon. They were kind of early on people who helped my channel grow because they promoted me, because I messaged their fans, who they call nerd fighters, found a bunch of them found my channel and were subscribing, and I kept seeing the word nerd fighter everywhere. I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is. And so I messaged John Green. I just sent him a YouTube message through the YouTube message system. And I said, hey, these nerd fighters are finding me and they like what I do and blah, blah, blah. And he responded and he liked it too. And since then they've been my friends. So it's like way back when. So that's how I got involved with the Vlogbrothers, I guess, and now I've hosted Crash Course with them, and it's been a good. It's not really a business relationship. They're just friends. I feel like they're just friends. But then like other people, like I've collaborated with Julian Smith. Do you know who that is? Yeah,
I'm not familiar.
I mean, there was a time when I could say that, and I would be confident that everyone knew who he was. There's just so many more channels now, and he doesn't make stuff as much anymore. And a lot of the people that I used to collaborate with don't make a lot of stuff anymore.
I think the way YouTube's changed, I mean, even in the time we've done it, that kind of forcing, if you're not making a ton of stuff, you're just going to get pushed down by the people who are making a ton of stuff. It can be tough for people to get exposure.
Yeah. I think it's just like these people contacted me to collaborate because it was so small and everyone knew everyone.
Yeah.
Charlie Isukulek, he's a big British YouTuber. Charlie Isukulek.
I've heard of him.
Or he was. He's not making stuff anymore. There was a big moment for me when he, at VidCon, he was on stage and he said, "Who do you want to collaborate with?" And he said, "Me." He said, WheezyWaiter. And since then, like a lot of people have commented to me about that. They're like, "I first heard about you when Charlie at VidCon said who said your name," and so he was a big help for me. I think it was just because it was a small, tightly knit community, and nowadays it's like people will ask to collab with me, and I've never heard of them, and then I'll check them out, and I usually like them, but they're just too many to know.
Yeah. Do you think the community, like that tight-knit community, has been lost? Is there any, I don't know, like it feels like you say there's so many channels, there's so much noise in a way that it's really, like, I don't know, I feel like we came into this later and we don't have, we've got a few people we collaborate with, but it's often just like, it's a lot of noise and a lot of people emailing. And do you think like that community spirit has been lost?
Yeah, I think it's different. It's like there's too many now. Now when you say that you make YouTube videos, you have no idea what the person means. It could be many different types of things, and they could have millions of subscribers and you've never heard of them.
Yeah.
And that's so weird to me, because back in the day when I remember when Vlogbrothers and Charlie is so cool, like hit 100,000 subscribers, or when Philip DeFranco hit 100,000, I'm like, that's so many. That's so huge.
It's a huge number of people.
To me, that was like, they were huge celebrities to me.
Yeah.
And now I come across a channel with 5-10 million subscribers, and I'm like, who? I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
I would say that, obviously there's something lost in the tight-knit community, but I think ultimately it's a good thing. I think it's probably better now because there are more people making a living and making a success out of YouTube. I think that's probably ultimately a better thing than just the few elite people making a living.
I've certainly found like some, you'd be like, oh yeah, I make videos, and they're like, oh, you must know this person, and I'm like, who with the what and what do they do? And it's like, well, they make videos about something that I've never heard of, and it's like they've got 6 million subscribers. It's like, oh, okay, good.
It's just weird. It's also very confusing, and it's kind of, I used to think I could somewhat have an idea what the future was going to be like, and now I have no idea. I have no idea what this means for the future of entertainment and how we get our information and make a living and doing this. So I have no idea.
How do you manage that with the, because you make a living at this and it's changing all the time, and you've been around, for pretty much since the beginning. So how over time have you managed that to make it keep making you a living while it's completely changing?
Right now, I mean, I've just, compared to other people who do this, usually I feel like I make more content. I make more than a lot of people do. Like a lot of people make like one a week or one a month. If I make one a week, which the past few weeks I've been making one a week because we just moved and I had a baby.
Congratulations, by the way.
Well, thank you. But that's like, I feel guilty making one a week. Like I usually make at least 2, often 3, and then there are periods of time where I make them every weekday. And I feel like because I make a lot of content, over 10 years, I've developed a very loyal base of people who will watch and who know me, and who are really just a really good audience, really good, nice, friendly audience. Because I've been honest with them, they are honest and nice with me. So Patreon has been very helpful because of all of those reasons. So Patreon and then occasional sponsors, and I'm doing fine. And I also don't live like royalty, so I'm fine. I don't have a lot of expenses.
I wanted to ask, like you mentioned there about your audience and kind of the loyal people who keep coming back. One thing that's given, made me a constant fan over, the years that I've watched is the comedy that you work into your videos. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, as a British person, I think we like this kind of slightly absurdist kind of, I don't know, like, there's a lot of American comedy which seems to be more in your face than yours, which is kind of a more subtle, almost British comedy thing. Yeah, I'm just wondering, go on.
Well, I prefer British comedy, just personally. I feel like, and it was never a conscious thing. I think I just naturally like that kind of humor. And I didn't even realize it until I discovered so many British people liked my videos. Yeah. I just thought I just had weird, absurd humor, but it turns out I have weird, absurd British humor. So.
There's a whole nation of people with absurd humor. So
right. I think it's more than just British. I think it's a lot of countries outside of America, like Australian humor and New Zealand humor to me is pretty similar to British humor.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people who like me from there too. There's been indication that I have a lot of people from Russia who like me, which is weird. Yeah.
I don't know anything about Russian humor, I gotta say, but
no. I just do what I do. I just do what I do. I'm not consciously trying to appeal to anyone.
There's a big difference in my eyes, like, because I like comedy, but then I'm aware that I'm not necessarily hilarious. But you are always funny, and I'm kind of like. Did you
at a pretty crazy, like, really frequent rate? The rate you turn out the videos, like you said, it's amazing. Like with your skits and stuff.
Yeah, I think you come up with a lot of good jokes.
Well, I've always been, my whole life, my dad has always been a very silly person. He makes jokes about everything, like nothing is serious. I have a problem actually being serious, I think, in serious moments. My whole life I've always made jokes, and I think part of it was the classic reasons you make jokes: to hide from anything real, to hide yourself. You make jokes. And it's just over my life, it's just become a natural thing. Like my mind is always first going for the joke. Like, this, what's funny about this? What's funny about that? And
it's like brilliant for coming up with YouTube videos. Awkward at funerals.
Yes, exactly. In everyday conversation like this, I can be very serious. I can, like, right now I'm not telling jokes all the time. But and I think maybe as I've gotten older, I've become a little more serious in normal conversation. But when I'm making a video, it has to have it feels like it's not right if it doesn't have a joke, like, at a certain moment. And it's just a natural thing that I do. And I don't know. Sometimes I think I go too far with it. Sometimes I think that's too many jokes. People need some kind of seriousness here.
What I like is, and I think the way it's kind of similar to go for American comedy though, but to a sitcom, where it's like, if it's funny all the time, when something serious happens, people take it way more seriously. Like, if you're watching the news and someone's like, this is so serious, it's like, yeah, but you're pulling the serious card every night. But when it's a comedy thing, and then you have something to say about something, then it's like, oh wow, Craig's actually serious about this, and it's like, that means it's like a real thing, that it has far more impact when you don't play the serious card all the time, which again adds that edge.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll keep making the jokes then. Right now, lately, I've been kind of this is going to be my own personal therapy session now. Lately, I've been kind of struggling with what to do next, because YouTube is such a big, confusing place now. And it seems like the things that do well on YouTube lately are more specific things that are consistent and specific about a topic. Like your channel, one of your channels today, I found out it's a specific thing. I mean, it has a broad range of topics, but it's specifically, this is a weird fact about the world, and then you talk about it. Or there's channels where it's fact-based, like list channels. There's always, we're going to do a list of things. We're going to do a list of things. Or unboxing videos, or and the channel is all about that one thing. My channel has always been about everything. It's been whatever I want to do that day. I'm going to do an unboxing video, but it's going to have a Wheezy quality to it, and it's just going to be weird and funny and not serious. And there's going to be nothing real about it. And I struggle with, do I want to have a weekly segment where I do unboxing videos or a sketch comedy, or do I want to get consistent in that way? And then I try things and I'm like, yeah, this is fun, I don't want to do it anymore, and then I'll try something else. And I'm just kind of all over the place, and I think that's why my channel stays where it is these days. there's no room for growth.
So, but I think that's also like the strength because, you do a lot of different things. It's like I always know when I click on one of your videos, I'm going to be entertained in some way. Like whether it's going to be funny or it's always going to be funny, but there's always going to be that element of entertainment. So I just know like that's an entertaining one when I'm having a tea break or whatever. So it's kind of like it's a niche in a way, even though it's like really broad.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
I 100% seriously would watch you unboxing things if you made jokes.
Yeah, that would be hilarious.
Said things. David and I had a conversation, a lengthy conversation about how we should definitely start an unboxing channel just so companies will send us all the cool technology that we end up spending so much money on. Just unboxing it all. Because that's how it works, right?
It is actually probably. Well, another problem is I actually don't like having a lot of things. I don't. If we're talking unboxing specifically, I would probably like it for like a month, and then I'd be like, I don't want all this stuff. I want to get rid of this stuff. And I would feel like I'm lying to people if I'm pretending to be excited about getting things, like opening stuff up. Because I don't really need anything. I'm happy, guys. I'm happy.
I've got an angle. I've got an angle for this. We could brainstorm a whole new YouTube channel right now. It's called The Boxing Channel, where instead of unboxing things, you box your things and give them away to charities or like anything can come in.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. You could do both, like Monday unboxing, Friday boxing up, and sending off to whichever charity.
That is wonderful. I bet it's too good of an idea. It's probably already been done. Someone's probably doing it.
You should Google it right now. The Boxing Channel. Weird. That's not going to be Google. That's not going to be YouTube Googleable, which is what I call searching on YouTube, because you're just going to get people punching each other in the face.
Yeah. Pugilists.
The Reboxing Channel?
I still like boxing. I still like it. Who cares? See, that's why I'm not successful.
Wait. It'll be the ultimate. You've made it when you type into Google boxing and the number one result is your channel rather than something related to the sport of boxing.
Higher than Rocky, or higher than who's the latest famous boxer? I don't even know.
There was a dude who was not a boxer who was fighting a boxer. I really know nothing about this, apparently.
Yeah, me neither.
I know the boxer won, but then even the guy who lost walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars, and then I thought I was in the wrong business, and then I went back to work.
Yeah, but then you would have to be punched in the face a bunch of times. It'd probably be worth it.
Yeah, I think it's like if it was one fight, I'd do it. I mean, one concussion's not too bad. I think it's that like years of getting to the point where someone's going to pay you hundreds of millions to lose a fight.
One concussion's not too bad. I got you. I'm going to quote. You should put that on a T-shirt.
One concussion's not too bad, and we just hand it out to boxers, and you don't build a career that way. Speaking of T-shirts, you also, as well as Patreon and all of these, you were working with BBS. You did something with Google. Obviously, there's the YouTube ads as well. I know you've done. You still do merch. I remember you had trainers back in the day, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. Are you still doing trainers? I would buy some trainers.
I had Wheezy shoes.
Sorry, we call them trainers. Plimps. Tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes, yeah. I knew what you meant, though. Yeah,
sorry, I realized that it doesn't always translate. Yeah,
I was hoping I knew what you meant, but
because if you were doing Wheezy pants, we would be, that's underwear by us. So,
Yeah, that was probably my favorite piece of merch I ever did was the Wheezy shoes. But you can't get them anymore. But it was a small company called Tweak, and they might still be around doing stuff. But they got Rhett and Link to do shoes, and then they got me, and then some other YouTubers. And there was like a hidden place in the shoes for. Oh, there are some secrets about the shoes. Like if you removed the bottom inside sole, there was like a crushed eagle underneath. There was a picture of a crushed eagle.
I just hit my mic stands with exclamation of coolness if anyone heard that rumble.
Yeah, they were cool shoes, and I had a couple pairs, but I wore them out. I don't have them anymore.
Oh no!
I don't.
Not like a fresh pair in a box.
I just don't keep things, guys. I'm a minimalist. I just get rid of stuff. This is my new office. I'm showing you. This isn't going to work on podcast, but it's a big empty room right now. Pretty much.
It's a nice. I used to be a lot more minimalist until it was like, oh yeah, you need like an iPad for a teleprompter, and then like a camera, and then like a tripod, and then lights, and then it's like, oh, you don't want to constantly be taking one camera to the other tripod to shoot another thing, and so then you get another camera and another tripod and another teleprompter, and
I didn't show you the part of the room over there which has
the light.
The light is in the closet, and then I have several small tripods. I have 2 cameras. One of them's being fixed. So I have equipment, but it's actually a pretty small amount of equipment. I only have 1 light, and I don't have a teleprompter. I've never used a teleprompter. I have for Crash Course, but yeah, I still try to keep it as minimalist. And when I get new equipment, I try to sell the old equipment because I just don't like having piles of stuff. I just don't like it.
Yes, I am the same way. Like big cupboards filled with stuff that people never use just feels like a weight on me. And then also like I have a big problem with the waste. Like if there's an old camera sitting there, it's like I feel like someone should be the money also for selling it's obviously a bonus, but it's also like that waste that wasted utility. The fact that camera is sitting there that someone who is not me would really like to use.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about I have a GoPro and another small camera. I think I have 2 GoPros. I have a friend who worked for GoPro who sent me GoPros. So I have stuff that people give me. I probably never would have bought it, and it's a good problem to have, I guess. I shouldn't be complaining.
Well, it's a good. You could do this. This could be your first video for your boxing channel.
Yes. Box up but the problem, I don't want to box up gifts from people. My friend gave me this through him. Sending this out, yeah.
Changing tack a little bit. I mean, we've already talked a bit about, gear and YouTube and how it's changed over the years. I mean, 10 years ago is a really different time, especially, with regards to community. Is there anything that you found, what do you think's changed the most? Is it, I always think now shooting, and I wasn't doing video 10 years ago, but the fact that a drone is basically what a helicopter and a camera crew used to do 10 years ago. Like I love the TV show Top Gear. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it's this British show where these guys...
I have. Yeah.
And it's just the most beautifully shot thing. And it's just they're filming these cars from like helicopters. And it's like, now I'm shooting on this one thing I have is the Mavic drone. It's like it fits in your hand and it's shooting 4K video like a camera crew and a helicopter would need. And then there's the recent thing I discovered is a DJI Osmo, which is basically a Steadicam that you hold in your hand and it just makes everything look amazing. So for me, it's like
a glide cam. You know what those are?
I do not know what that is.
It sounds like the same thing or a similar thing. Glide cam. It's like a pole, but then you balance the camera balances on the end in some way, and you can kind of just move around. It's like very steady.
Yes, it is. It is this like with a gyro or whatever it is on there. It was.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is something that I think's like changed enormously. What do you think's what's the biggest thing that what do you think has changed most notably? Because you've been in this space for so long.
I would say everything has changed. Everything's gotten better and easier. But I would say the most profound change happened early on, I think, which is like when I first started doing video, when I first started like turning the camera around and pointing it at myself and walking around, it felt weird. It felt like I am a freak of nature. I'm pointing a camera at myself and walking around. Who does that? No one does that. Now everyone does that because everyone has the back-facing camera on their phone. Everyone has a phone that can just point right at them very easily, and now it's incredibly normal. It's an incredibly normal thing. Yeah. And I feel like that's simply the most profound change, and it's because of the phone, I think. It's because of the camera in the phone. And that was just beginning when I started. So it happened early on, but now it's much more widespread. And now it's pretty common to see people with selfie sticks walking around. Like if you go to like some tourist area, people are walking around with selfie sticks and pointing directly back at them. So just the culture of shooting video of you talking to a camera has become so normal. It's become so expected and common, and I don't like it. I don't like that it has become common because I took a big risk doing that. I felt like I was like
a pioneer in awkward things in public.
I felt like no one's doing this because it's weird. I have the courage to do this. I'm going to do this. And no one else is going to do it, but no, people do it. Everyone does it.
I still don't see too many people walking around and openly addressing the camera. Like, people take photos of themselves. Yeah. Maybe it's just, I don't know, I live in Prague in the Czech Republic, but also when I'm in the UK. And there's plenty of people pointing cameras and getting their friends in and taking a picture, but I still don't see too many people like wearing a lav mic or they've got the big Rode thing and just like, hi, welcome to...
Yeah. I do see it happen, but it's not that often. That's true. It is more common, especially still photography, still photographs of yourself, like that selfies. I guess those didn't exist. People didn't just turn the camera around on themselves and take a still photograph. They with something behind them because they couldn't see what was behind. They couldn't see if they were getting themselves in it properly, so they wouldn't do it. So that's become more common. I did see the other day walking around my neighborhood with the dog. I did see someone with their phone talking to it, like outside their house, just like talk. And I don't think they were on the phone. I think they were recording. I don't think they were talking to just one person. I think they were recording something. So I think someday it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be all over the place. Everyone's going to be a vlogger.
Like a Black Mirror episode almost.
Well, I mean, yeah, and if
you don't do it, it'll be weird.
Yeah, if you look at like the number one profession kids want to be, it's a vlogger or like a YouTuber, and I just think that's bad. I think that's wrong. Because it's not sustainable. It's not gonna. There's not enough bandwidth for everyone to be doing it. There's not going to be enough people to watch it.
We need kids who still want to be doctors and architects and soldiers.
Yeah, that's true too. Yes.
I felt like such an old man when I read that. The one I read was a British survey of kids, and it was like YouTuber was the number one. And I was like, when I was a lad, it was you wanted to be a doctor. It's like, wow, I am an old man. What happened?
Right. I think you're going to have to truly love this in order to make it work, because you're gonna have to work hard if you're gonna want to be successful at this. I mean, come on, you guys work hard, right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
I roll in at about 11, then I have a coffee, and then I take some lunch, and then I'm usually out by 2.
Yeah. According to YouTube commenters, I just mostly go to Wikipedia and then just read a couple paragraphs and copy it in my own words. Apparently,
sure, so yeah, sure.
It's quite easy.
Even if you were just doing that for like 5 years would start to feel very tedious. It would start to feel pretty hard. It's not all fun, kids. It's not all fun.
No. Neither's being a doctor or an architect, though.
Yeah. No, true. Neither's doing anything really. Everything's got its downside.
This conversation took a turn for the darker of life's reality.
No. Yeah. You just gotta accept. You gotta accept everything has a downside, but working hard,
even your
will
dream
give you
job,
greater reward.
So for all those kids wanting to be YouTubers, what would you like? Someone starting out just today, what would you say they should do? Like, what should they focus on, or that sort of thing?
I think I would focus on not being a jerk. Figure out what it is you want to do. Like a channel like mine probably won't work anymore. Just a channel that's built around a personality, basically. Unless your personality is like really in your face and obnoxious. I don't think it'll work. I think you should probably find what was I gonna say? you should all aspects of production, not just being a personality in front of a camera. Try to figure out learn about shot composition, learn about video editing, learn about lighting and all the other aspects, because I think a lot of people when they want to do this, they're seeing the prominent people who are holding cameras and walking around and not doing anything. There's a lot of editing involved even in the channels that you love that seem like there isn't. That seems like it's just a person talking to a camera. There's a lot more involved. There's a lot of SEO involved. There's probably a lot of email campaigns, like to blogs and things to get prominent. So you're gonna have to don't think that this is just about being a personality in front of a camera, because then what you really want then is just to be an actor.
Yeah.
I
don't know. I often think like one of the biggest hidden things in videos that I really didn't appreciate and really realized is enormously challenging is story, like coming up with something interesting. Like you can make your videos the most beautiful things in the world, but if there's not a story there, if there's something not interesting happening.
That's what I remember. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say
you're welcome.
It has to be thank you. It has to be about something. It has to be about something other than just you and just think. You have to find a purpose. You have to find a reason to be doing this. And that's something I struggle with pretty often these days after 10 years of doing this, is like, sometimes I'll think maybe I should just do fitness stuff so that I can inspire people to be healthier. And I do that sometimes, and it's fun, but that's not what I want to do forever. And so, you need to find a specific purpose. Give people a reason to watch your videos other than you're an interesting, funny person. Yeah. Because everyone is interesting in their own way.
Speaking to that, I mean, we spoke about it a little bit earlier. What is there anything you're thinking of, like moving into now, or is it kind of still very much early thought processes and just this is more personal interest, and if you don't want to share, you don't have to at all? It's like if you've got some genius, like the boxing thing, like I wouldn't want to share the genius of that because someone will take it.
I will tell you everything. Usually, like to me, the success of something really has less to do, well, sometimes it has to do with the idea itself, but it usually has to do with the execution of the idea. So I can tell you the idea, and you might think, well, I'm going to go do that, but then you have to go do it. So, but like I have several ideas. Usually the struggle is how much work it will take, how much time it will take to do something, and will I be able to have the energy to sustain it? Because having a baby now, that generally that changes my focus. But I've been watching a lot of. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. It's basically WheezyWaiter, just what it's always been, just more organized, more tightly scheduled, more tightly structured. Like, you ever watch Comedy Bang Bang? There's the podcast Comedy Bang Bang, and then there's the show, which is like absurd talk show. It's like they make fun of the idea of a talk show, and then they go off on these very bizarre sketches, and it just goes off. And I kind of want to do something like that, just in the Wheezyverse, just more, go back to what I used to do, recurring characters, recurring things, just better produced, basically. And figuring out how I can manage my time to be able to do that on a regular basis. And resist the urge to just try to put something up all the time. Like, I think my inclination is always to I haven't put something up in a while. I should get this done and get it up. Like I need to do 3 videos a week, or they're gonna everyone's gonna forget about me, and I'm gonna die alone. But
taking a turn for the dark again.
Yeah, right. I mean, because
it's like your dream job will suck, and you will die alone. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Well,
WheezyWaiter.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, back when YouTube started, that was what worked, was putting up more stuff. If you put up more than someone else, and it was reasonably edited, if you competently put together, you were going to be more successful because you're going to be more visible. There's just more. But now there's just too much out there that doesn't work. There has to be some sort of other magic. I don't know what works now. I really don't know. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question at all, or if I just rambled a bit. But that's what I'm thinking right now.
No, you did answer. I appreciate it. I was just thinking, like, related to that idea of what's a negative driver and what's a positive driver, because like with our schedule, we're putting out a video 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, depending on how lazy I'm feeling on Sunday. And it's like, in a way, like you say, it's kind of like that's as good as it is to have the schedule, it's a negative driver. It's kind of like it's something I have to do, not something that I not want, not have. It's more complicated than that, but it's not a positive like. But then we're going to Amsterdam, and it's like making these mini documentaries. Take a shot, everybody. It's like a new thing, and that's like a much more positive thing for me. And I'm really looking forward to trying out new things and doing things like that. And I guess like learning. Sorry, now we're into my therapy session. This is an interview with Craig.
Well, that's the problem though. It's like I think the most exciting thing about a project is the beginning of the project. Is like when you start, you're like, this is exciting. We're gonna find out what happens. If you do it for years. Yeah, but if you do it for years, then it's like, oh, okay, I know everything that's to expect now. It's like it's kind of boring. You have to keep it fresh somehow. And so I was watching Comedy Bang Bang, and I was like, this is bizarre and absurd, and not everyone likes. I'm sure this isn't for everyone. I love this, and there's nothing necessarily groundbreaking about it. It's just a bunch of sketches, and it's just a bunch of people being silly. But I'm very entertained seeing how far and absurd they take this wherever they're going with this. Yeah. And I think I want to do that. I want to do more of that, and I want to remind myself while I'm doing it that people are going to like it, because it's hard to remember after doing this for so long. Nothing seems new anymore. So it's like I have to remind myself it doesn't matter. It's still fun. It's still entertaining.
And I think I don't know. Like I feel I recently took an improv class because I was like I'd like to be more funny. And it's like even if it doesn't land, it's still fun doing it. And it's still it gets you out of that comfort zone. It's trying something new. It's one of those things. Even if it fails, at least you tried, At least you had a crack at something. And
I'm very fortunate that I have the base of Patreon supporters and just YouTube supporters, so that if I do fail, it's not going to be that colossal of a failure, unless I offend a bunch of people and and fail in that way. But
honestly,
I don't think I'll.
Judging by what we've seen on YouTube lately, you could do something pretty darn heinous and then go off YouTube for a couple of weeks, make a public apology, get 1 million extra subscribers, and in 6 months, no one cares.
Yeah. Actually, it would be good for my career if I made a bunch of people.
It's really crazy.
The world, guys.
People just forget. It's mad.
I think people forget, but some people just like haven't. They just get more publicity. So it's like people who haven't heard of these people in question, suddenly they hear about them, they check them out, and they're like, that wasn't so bad. I kind of like what he appeals to my horrible side. I'm going to keep watching.
I wanted to ask, just going back a little, like working and being busy and all of this stuff, and now you've got a kid, you've just moved to a new place. I always like to wonder how people work, like about their work schedules and how they kind of treat their days, because I'm always looking to learn from that sort of thing. I was just wondering, like, what's your work schedule like now? What's it been like in the past? Is there anything you know, how do you feel about it?
Well, right now it's very
broad.
confusing. We just moved from Texas to the Midwest, and we had a baby, and so I'm still figuring out what my schedule is supposed to be like now. But I would say when I was growing, when the channel was growing, and I was working on becoming full time, I had a job. I had a day job it was like 10 to 6 ish was my schedule at the job. Yeah. So I would get up at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. and make a video in the morning before going to work. I was doing it every weekday. which is what led to my being able to quit and do full time. And then I continued every weekday after that for probably with some exceptions, for probably like 2 years full time. And that was like I'd get up at 8 or 9 and just work all day and get the video up by like whenever it got done, like 6 or 7. I'd get up, I'd look at the news, I'd look at comments, I'd write up, I'd come up with funny sketch ideas or jokes, and then I'd put together a loose script, shoot it for like an hour or 2, edit for like 3 or 4. It was always like 3 or 4 hours of editing. Yeah. And put it up every weekday. I did that for a while. So, but it's over the 10 years. It's the schedule has constantly changed. My ideal schedule, what I would love to happen, is that I get up, get all my breakfast, walk the dog, play with the baby a little bit, get to work at like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. I'm always my best in the morning. I'm always better at what I do in the morning.
David and I have the opposite schedules. I'm also a massive morning person, but it's okay because we're on massively different time zones.
Yeah, it works out for our recording.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. I'm just more excited to do things in the morning. At night I get tired and I just want to go to bed.
Yes, but, I don't understand David's position here. He has to defend himself. There are now 2 of us.
Yeah, the nighttime is way better. That's when my brain turns on. Like the morning, it's like my brain doesn't work.
My ideal schedule is I get up, I write a script, shoot a video, and then get it done. And if I were doing it every weekday, I think I'll ultimately probably do like 2 or 3 a week if I can get to a good schedule where I write one day, shoot and edit another day. And then but it would be great if I could work just specifically from like 9 to 5 every day. Just get it done. Because when you have a wife and kid, I don't know if either of you do. I don't know your situation.
I have 2 kids and a wife. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
David does. Okay. I'm getting married in the summer.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations. Then I want to have more boundaries to work and life, because before I had a wife and kid, everything was YouTube. It was just or going and hanging out with friends, but there was no specific schedule for hanging out with friends. So I'll just work until I'm done every day. It doesn't matter. I have no one. I'm alone. I'm sad. Yeah. I'll just work. Yeah. But now it's like
taking a turn for the dark.
Yeah. But now it's like I want to have time with outside of YouTube. I want to be away from it. Yeah. So I feel like it would be great if it were like 9 to 5 or 4 even. Just like cut it off. Yeah. After that time, I'm done. Whatever I got done, I got done.
Yeah. Especially with the kids. Like, I mean, like your wife's going to be a little more understanding that, oh, you're going to need to work a little bit later, but your little baby is like, no, I want your attention now, you know?
Right. And also, my wife has been dealing with the baby all day, so I need to give her a break. What usually happens, though, in this job is you're working on something and you're almost done, and you need like another hour, and you'll be done, and you can put it up on YouTube or whatever. and then it extends into the evening time, into your lifetime. So I'm just gonna make. Yeah.
I've never had this happen.
Oh, you never had that problem? Oh, yeah.
Definitely have.
Yeah. So I realized the dream of doing every weekday is never gonna happen anymore. Yeah. So like I'm gonna have to, unless I just, well, I was doing at the beginning of this year, I was doing every weekday. It's just a lot shorter, simpler videos. So I think I'm gonna go to 2 a week and just work in the. I'm gonna try to just work in that time slot. Whatever I get done gets done, and that's it. You know, just walk away from the work.
Yeah,
walk away. It's hard to do though when you actually like the work that you do.
I see. I'm the least experienced here when it comes to dealing with having children and stuff. But I don't know. I'm the age where friends are starting to have kids, and it's like you can see work schedule, especially like most of my friends, work for themselves in some capacity, and it's like, work schedule is just out of the window, largely because if you work from home, it's like you're always there, you're always around. It's kind of like there's not that separation of Intel needs me to come in from 9 to 5, or we're not going to get a paycheck at the end of the month. It's like, I am kind of here, and I do make videos on the internet, so it's not really like I'm working on the new Pentium 6 or whatever they're on TV.
Right,
it's not a Pentium 6.
That's ideally we've been living in small apartments, but we have a house now. Well, we're renting a house in the Midwest, so partly the move here was because of that, because now I have this office. I have this with a door on it that I can shut.
Fancy.
So, actually, the door was actually literally just put on yesterday. The house is owned by our friends, and they're fixing it up to eventually sell it, but we're just renting it while they're fixing it up. So there was no door, but now there's a door. So I have a little separation from work and life, which is pretty nice.
Thank you so much. This for me as a longtime fan of yours has been quite a privilege. So like you say, flattery will get me everywhere. So there you go. I really do appreciate it.
I'm a short time fan of you. So
well, thank you.
Well, yeah, it was nice chatting with you guys. Bye.
Bye. Feedback and updates. Should we just jump right into that section? Casey Jane. Oh, this is a good one. What was my comment on this? LOL. For reals? Do you want to? This is more like definitely in your space with the.
So this happens all the time on articles on Today I Found Out on YouTube. We're constantly getting accused of plagiarizing Gizmodo, right? All the time. And it's because Gizmodo copies our content all the time with permission. I gave them permission to do it in exchange for them including some link backs and stuff like that. And they actually went further and include all the related links. So it was a great traffic source for me. Like almost every day there for like a year and a half, they were copying some new content. And it was great. And a lot of them, because they have a huge fan, they'd get like hundreds of thousands of views on them, and then it would send a lot of traffic back my way. So it was a great relationship until I think Gizmodo, when they got sued or something, they got new management now, and then they stopped doing that. But so the point is,
wait, what did they get sued for?
Oh, the Hulk Hogan thing, where they a long time ago they published or something his like a video of him sleeping with someone or something like that. I'm not.
Who's Hogan?
Hulk Hogan, the wrestler.
Oh yeah. Wait. Didn't the company who got sued go out of business?
Yeah, well, yeah, so this trial went a long time, and then I'm not really sure of a lot of the details. I think there was like a billionaire or something who really didn't like the owner of Gizmodo or something, and so he funded funded the lawsuit, and then it ended up causing the bankruptcy of the whole thing when Hulk Hogan won, and then that's new management at Gizmodo, and then they stopped doing the republishing thing. So so anyways, the point of this is that we're constantly getting like a Casey Jane here. This is a repeated almost word for word from this site, and then they link to Gizmodo, and it's like, did you notice who they said on Gizmodo was the author?
Yes,
it was us. Yeah.
It says there at the bottom, at the top, from todayifoundout.com.
At the bottom,
and then at the bottom, Melissa writes for the wildly popular interesting fact website, todayifoundout.com.
Yeah.
It's like, and then plugs for our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and so, but this still happens all the time. We're constantly like, oh, today I found out just plagiarizes Gizmodo. And it's like, no, it's not quite what's happening. And so anyways, I thought we should just mention that so everybody knows now.
Have we had it on YouTube? We get some, with Top 10's net, one issue we had was, Top 10 lists became incredibly popular, and you'd get a lot of people who'd make these really terrible lists, that just have very limited graphics and then quite weak voiceover or just a robot voice reading it, and then they'd publish it, and it would just be straight up lifted from top10s.net, the website, from an article published in 2013 or whatever, and then we would make it like the official version, because that's the the website that goes along with the YouTube channel, and people would be like, actually this tiny YouTube channel published this in 2016 and you've just copied it exactly. And it's like, actually no, they just lifted the article from our website. We just take 4 years to make things.
That's happened a few times. I remember it hasn't happened very recently, I don't think, but back before the channel really took off, when we were like small, people I guess just assumed we were copying other people. But that happened a lot. I remember there was one on like something to do with cats, like why cats like catnip or something like that. One of those one, and this one video had, I don't know, like 500,000 views from this other channel.
Cats on the internet.
It was quite popular on this channel. It was pretty popular, and they were, and someone came on and was like, oh, you just lifted this word for word from this other channel, like how dare you or whatever. And I was like, well, no, they lifted it from like you just said, like from the 2010 version when we actually wrote the article in the first place. I don't feel like that happens too much anymore. I think because we're bigger, people just assume.
I think also YouTube's cracked down on this quite heavily, because there used to be a lot of channels doing this, and I very rarely see them these days. It's been maybe a year since I've seen anything like that, and it used to be very common.
Yeah, what still happens a lot for Today I Found Out, the website at least, constantly get people just copy the articles. One time one guy actually copied the entire site and made the entire site look like Today I Found Out, and so he made a site. It was called Today I Found Out dot whatever South Africa's extension is, ZE or
ZA,
whatever, something.
I think. Yeah, Z.
ZA. Yeah. So he copied the entire thing, and then he had the audacity to be offended at me when I was like, no, you got to take that site down. I mean, like, I don't mind if people copy an article here or there, with credit, but this is like you copying the entire site. And every day he must have had some sort of software that automatically updated, because I'd post something and then like within a half hour it was on his site as well. And he was like, no, I can do this because whatever you say, you can, let people copy an article. Like,
he has a very weak understanding of copyright law, apparently.
He eventually banned anyone from the US from being able to visit the site. Like, he just blocked it in his domain or his server.
That's going to limit his ad revenue.
Yeah, I did actually check, I don't know, a few months back just to see, because it's been several years now, and to see if it was still up, and no, it wasn't. It was down. So
could you not just DCMA to his web host? This is so powerful.
But like, it happens so often that people copy the articles that I don't know. I could spend all day just sending those out, and so I usually just figure I'll just make new content. It doesn't really matter.
There you go, Casey Jane. Not a copy from Gizmodo. We're looking for a producer. If you are listening to this, and we kind of thought this was the best place to put this out there, if you'd like to... Did we talk about this before? Did I just edit something related to this?
Yeah, we briefly mentioned it kind of offhand, but yeah.
That just
for a podcast.
Yes, importantly, we are looking, if you are interested in working with us on this podcast, drop us an email, podcast@todayifoundout.com. And we can start a dialogue if you've got some experience with audio and like our stuff. I think more importantly, like if you have if you think you have the feel of what we're doing here, get in touch with us. Anything else we need to say about that?
No, I think that's good.
Another thing was kind of related to the format of the show, which is something we've been discussing a bunch by email over the last couple of weeks, especially with people that we've sought out for feedback, like our early beta listeners. And that was kind of how this show should be formatted. Like, I think the show, a couple of things we've been discussing was, where do we have the fact section? Where do we have the Q&A? Where do we have the practical knowledge? And then whether we split those things off into either 2 separate episodes or 2 separate shows. And I think basically we'd like to solicit feedback from the audience. What do you think? And the best way to do that, as we've mentioned previously, is in our forum, forums.todayifoundout.com, or just go to todayifoundout.com and click on forums in the bar, and then you can let us know what you think about that. If you've got something to say, that's probably where we'll hear about it and have the discussion on that.
Well, I mean, we also have podcasts at todayifoundout.com if they want to do that, but I do think the forum on this one particularly is best, because then other people can ring in on what everyone's saying.
Yeah. Another very vital debate we've been having on the forums is about the whistling. We previously had whistling instead of the what was described by David's friend Noah as a classy. Did he say classy?
Maybe.
He said something to describe the whistle. And I was like, that is a to describe the guitar. He was like, that is a classy guitar.
Oh yeah,
I was like,
yeah, the classy. Yeah, he didn't like the whistle though. He was in that camp. But username Cryo and JNKai and Barone on the forum, they say otherwise. They say keep the whistle, bring it back.
Don't forget YouTube subscriber Fausto DC. He also contends
I did.
Yeah, don't forget him. He also contends that the whistle needs to be brought back. I think these guys are in the minority, but
I think Noah was actually the first one to say get rid of the whistle before he ever even published the first episode of the podcast. He was like, I gave him the little sample beforehand, and he was like, no, dude, get rid of the whistle.
Use the whistle.
It's not good.
Okay. We should also this should go earlier in the podcast, I suppose, but thank you to everyone who has reviewed the podcast. I think we have 18 reviews. I use iTunes mostly on the computer where I look at the reviews, and it is incredibly frustrating how I think I have UK iTunes, I think was my default one, but you can select the different countries, and so obviously the US gets the most reviews, but you can't see them all in one place. So you can't I want to look at all the reviews for my podcast. It's like, okay, well, I'll go to the US, I'll go to the UK, I'll go to Canada, I'll go to Australia, and it's like, this is dumb. And it's like every time you switch between countries, it takes you back to the homepage, so you have to search again for the podcast. Yes, it's slightly frustrating. But for everyone who has left us a review, I've seen some on UK and on US iTunes, it really does actually make a difference. It's not just nice for us to read the feedback, or not nice if you've left us a negative review, but it does really help us get more exposure in iTunes and get this podcast in front of more people, which means we can keep making more podcasts. So if you do like this show, please tell us you like this show. Review on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. We know it's a pain in the ass. We just appreciate it if you do. If you now go to iTunes, and we talk a lot about iTunes even though we are both on Android, because iTunes is still very dominant in the podcast space. And now, if you search for BrainFood in iTunes, we come up. Progress is being made.
Still not number one though, right?
No, there's some other one I can tell you right now. Actually, I search for it so often because I'm like, I wonder if you've got any new reviews, and then we don't. We're number 2. There's another one called BrainFood Podcast, which I guess is
that was from a while ago. Yeah.
Q&A and bonus facts, rolling these into one kind of makes sense. I guess they're kind of a little bit different. And the Q&A, I think we've only got one Q&A this week, right?
And feedback.
And
some
feedback.
of the feedback.
Absolutely. Q&A and feedback kind of all rolled into one. You going to try and pronounce that name, or am I?
I'll go with Zara, and just
silent
S, probably.
Okay. Zara
Hill.
You don't think it's Cesara. Zara Hill. Will you be joined in the future by Shell and or any of your writers? It would be great to get them know a little more too. So for those who wonder who Shell is, that is the guy who I work on the Top 10s channel with. I don't know. I could ask him. He'd be a good guest.
Yeah, he's done a lot of things over the years.
A lot of things.
Also a bit of a search engine expert, and among other things. So yeah,
I'm sure
he would be a good one to have on, actually.
Yeah, I should ask him next time we chat. So yes, potentially. Obviously, it's up to him largely. I cannot force him
if he wants to come on. And Carl, as we said as we probably said, I don't know how we're going to cut it up, but as you've probably heard, Carl's coming on soon enough.
Yes.
So yeah, he's one of the main writers for today, I found out, and sometimes Top 10.
We are both in Amsterdam next week, and I think we're doing the podcast. The two of us will be there in person, which will be interesting. And Carl, I imagine, will be dialing in from... He's in the UK, right?
He is in the UK. Yeah.
There we go. Yes, I look forward to that. And now that's it. Yeah. That's the Q&A was extensive this week. I have to say a lot of that was because we posted last week's episode on YouTube, where most of the comments come in about half an hour before we recorded this week's episode. So not a lot of Q&A came in, but we'll try and time that better in the future.
So now on to bonus facts.
Bonus facts. These are kind of related to the main section, right? Like Voltaire and Condamine and these kind of dudes.
Yeah, and so let's see. Let's start with the apple falling on his head, right? So you hear most of these anecdotes from your teacher or whatever, and they're almost always not true.
I was assuming that was just a lie. Like, I mean, he didn't. Yeah. Boom. Oh, gravity.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's kind of an exaggeration the way it's often presented, but the tie-in here is Voltaire was actually one of the first to write about this story. He wrote about it about a year after Newton's death, but a year before when Newton actually died. There was also a reference to it, and then some of Newton's people who knew him, his acquaintances and friends and his assistant, actually rang in and said, yeah, no, this is something Newton actually told us. Do you want to read the quote from William Stuckley? Was Newton's close friend, and he wrote one of the best accounts of the story Newton told him about the apple falling on his head and how it inspired him to study gravity.
I shall do my best. After dinner, the weather being warm, we went into the garden and drank tea under the shade of some apple trees. Only he and myself. Amidst other discourse, he told me he was just in the same situation as when formerly the notion of gravitation came into his mind. Why should that apple always descend perpendicularly to the ground? Thought he to himself, occasioned by the fall of an apple as he sat in a contemplative mood. Why should it not go sideways or upwards, but constantly to the earth's center? Assuredly, the reason is that the earth draws it. There must be a drawing power in matter, and the sum of the drawing power in the matter of the earth must be in the earth's center, not in any side of the earth. Therefore, does this apple fall perpendicularly or toward the center? If matter thus draw matter, it must be in proportion to its quantity. Therefore, the apple draws the earth as well as the earth draws the apple. Wow. By the way, can I just note here how difficult it is when we're making videos and there's some quote from like the 17th century? I mean, yeah. I feel I got through that quite well, but there are some weird words and people used commas really differently back in the day, it seems.
Yeah, their punctuation was completely odd, and often they have like those 2 or 3, like what we would consider like sometimes even page long. If you read Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, right, he'll have these page long sentences, one sentence, and it's like an entire page, and they just...
Yeah, do it. Reading those is always like, it's one of those things you read in your head and you're like, this is totally fine. And then you read it aloud and you're like, every cue about where to pause, commas and things is just out of the window, and you just kind of have to guess as to the correct structure.
So this story was corroborated by others who knew him, knew Newton, such as John Condamine was Newton's assistant, and he told the same story. And so it wasn't really, there's no reference to it actually falling on his head. It just fell while he was sitting there, just, whatever, under the tree. And so it was really, and it should be clear here, he spent like the next 2 decades trying to get to the bottom of gravity and come up with his solidified theory of gravity, and borrowed from ideas from other people, like famously like Edmund Halley and stuff, like for Halley's Comet and all that. So it wasn't like all his own thing. Yeah. So this was just sort of the inspiration where he really started thinking about it and trying to, and where he really started doing his work on it was just this apple tree thing. And if you're wondering, actually the apple tree, it still exists. It's still there. At least the one that they think it is. It's his family home in Woolsthorpe Manor near Grantham, UK.
I have a feeling I've been here. My gran would always take me to, like, we call them stately homes. It's where kind of the homes of old famous people or just rich people used to live, and they're often owned by an organization called the National Trust, and you can go visit them and wander around, and they kind of have all this antique furniture and stuff from back in the day. It's great. It's I think I found
this one is protected by the tree is and manor is protected by the National Trust, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we should go. We could go to that one.
Yeah, the tree actually fell down during a storm, but it re-rooted, and so it's still around. It's estimated to be about 400 years old now. It's an apple tree still there.
That's great.
Go see it. Go sit on. I don't know. They probably don't let you sit under it. I wonder if we could get permission to sit under it, though. That'd be kind of cool.
I imagine it's going to be one of those things that's kind of roped off because it's Newton's tree.
We could just really quickly, like we'll bring some lights. Just jump the rope, and you just have to sit there for a minute, and then we can use that shot, like over and over again.
And then we'll broadcast it on the internet and get in trouble with the National Trust, and then you can never come to one of our properties again. As a British person, that's disastrous.
So bonus fact 2, Voltaire. So why did he land himself in the Bastille? And it turns out
this one, this wasn't teased since the beginning of today's episode.
Yeah, he didn't start it. Basically, this was he started it type of argument. So this quite wealthy French nobleman. Do you want to try to read that name there? The
Chevalier de Rohan. I don't know. He's a French nobleman. We can call him CDR.
Ironically, he made fun of Voltaire's pen name. So Voltaire actually used tons of different pen names. I think like 170 something over his career, but this, the one he's most famous for is Voltaire. And so this CDR made fun of Voltaire's pen name, and Voltaire being Voltaire, and very clever with his writing, he insulted Mr. CDR ADR right back. And apparently the nobleman wasn't too pleased with this. And so he just had his assistants go, beat up Voltaire. After this beating, Voltaire wasn't too happy with that. So he said, unless you pay me some money, I'm going to challenge you to a duel. We're going to duel. And so the de Ronin guy was like, no, I'm really wealthy. I'm just going to get King Louis the 25th to, or 15th, sorry, the 15th to throw you in prison. Without trial. No trial, you're just going to go to the Bastille, and you're going to be there for as long as I want you to be there.
Well, it was great to be rich back in the day. Like, you could do anything you wanted.
This comes back to the fact that at this point in his career, Voltaire was not well known and he was not wealthy. And so they could do that to him, right? When he wrote and when he offended the wealthy people. And so later, when he was wealthy, they could no longer do this to him, right? They could exile him and stuff like that. But, he was very protected by his wealth and allowed him a lot of freedom. So at this stage of his career, though, he couldn't. So he's in the Bastille, and then he was there for, I think it was about 11 months, I think. And then he suggested, because he was seemingly was going to be there for indefinitely, like as long as they wanted him to be there. And so he just said, hey, how about you just send me to England? I'll just go to England. I'm out of your hair. And they eventually, his request was granted, and they shipped him off to England. And then that comes back to the start of the story when he got to eventually come back to Paris and had dinner with Le Condamine.
Well, I want to repeat, like, you have to go to prison for this, for murder, and be like, you could just send me to France. If they said yes, I'd be like, great, I'll take it. I mean, that sounds much better than prison.
Yeah. That seems like that was like a big thing back then. Like in Britain, you send the convicts to Australia. You're just like, out of sight, out of mind, whatever. We don't care. Because it is like, it's all the work. It's a long ways away. And back then it was a lot of work to come back. And,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Listen, I'll take a foreign country that's far away over 17th century prison, 18th century prison. That's probably quite a grim affair, especially the Bastille. Yeah. It's not exactly famous for its creature comforts.
Yeah. I mean, if you were wealthy in the Bastille, you could have you could even have like assistants and servants and things. But, if you were Voltaire and others like him, you didn't have that, So, yeah, it wasn't a pleasant time. Speaking of when he was in the Bastille, he has one of the references, of the Man in the Iron Mask, where he obviously didn't meet him himself, but he spoke to an inmate who supposedly actually had contact with that mysterious prisoner known as today as the Man in the Iron Mask.
We never knew, and people never figured out who that was, right? It was always just speculation.
Yeah, they know his name. His name is known, but who he actually was and whether that was his real name isn't known. It's Eustace Dagduagar, maybe? I don't know. It was his name, and yeah, we had a good, 2,500 words article on this, on kind of trying to get to the bottom of who he was, actually. And it's kind of, there's theories out there, and some make more sense than others, but yeah, no one quite knows. And of course, Alexander Dumas most famously wrote like a fictional account of this character, mostly made up, but Dumas did actually do research. It was similar to The Count of Monte Cristo. Was actually based very, very loosely on supposedly a real man, or at least Dumas thought he was a real man. It was a story he read from police archivist Jacques Puchet.
I'm not even going to try. I would say maybe Puget, but just because they tend to...
Yeah, sure.
One thing I always remember about French pronunciation is just always leave the last consonant off. Yeah. So if you would have like about, you would just say like about.
Just
or like,
completely ignore the last several letters.
Generally trail off into nothingness.
So Dumas actually thought this was a real person, and he read the story of this guy who had this sort of revenge plot. Mm-hmm. He ended up getting thrown in prison for something he didn't do, and then when he came out, he just had this elaborate revenge plot. He ended up becoming wealthy, and then just got revenge on everyone, and it was great. And so then The Count of Monte Cristo was born kind of from that sort of seed of an idea into a completely fictionalized version of that. And the Man in the Iron Mask was a similar thing. It was sort of like there was a real person, but Dumas' interpretation was quite fictional.
I've not read The Count of Monte Cristo. I should probably read that one.
Oh, you have not read? You're kidding me. That is my favorite book of all time.
Oh, really?
You seriously have not read that?
I have not read that.
Great book. I mean, there was also the movie was also great. There's been several movies, but the one with the guy who plays Jesus in a different movie. You know what I'm talking about?
I want to say Mel Gibson, but that's probably not correct, is it?
No, he
wasn't he in the Passion of the Christ? Was that?
Yeah,
Mel Gibson?
Passion of the Christ. The guy who played Jesus.
It's not Mel Gibson. No.
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Did Mel Gibson play Braveheart? Because
this actor actually almost died right next to where I used to live.
Oh.
He was in a motorcycle accident driving up when I used to live in Gold Bar, and he was driving up over the Cascades, and he got in a motorcycle accident, and almost died. But his name is he has an unpronounceable name. Okay, Jim
Caviezel.
Link.
Caviezel.
There you go.
Caviezel.
Okay. Yeah, so I really like his actor. His version of the Count of Monte Cristo, where he played the Count of Monte Cristo, is great. But the book, you should definitely read it, and not the abridged version, because the first time I ever encountered this, I didn't know I had the abridged version, and it was awful. It was stupid. I barely got through it. I was just like, this is dumb. Why do people like this book? And then later, I got the full version, and I was like, all right, I'll give it another go. Now that I'm older, maybe I'll like it now. And I read it, and it was amazing, and it's my favorite book of all time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will get on that. Count of Monte Cristo.
That's our book recommendation for the day. Go read the full, non-abridged Count of Monte Cristo.
You want to hear like a bizarre aside? I was in China last year, and I went to visit these kind of abandoned cities and places and all of this. And there was one where there was this, basically they'd replicated a giant French chateau. So they'd basically copied this chateau that's outside of Paris, this huge thing. And they turned it into like a hotel, which was just completely unoccupied. It was really bizarre. And they had these kind of libraries and bookshelves filled with books. But you go closer, and all the books are fake. They're just empty, there's the outside of the book, and then there's no pages inside, and all really light. Just countless copies of books. They are all fake copies of the Count of Monte Cristo.
Really?
I was really tempted to steal one, and then I remembered that I was in China, and I probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Hope people enjoyed the WheezyWaiter interview, which we haven't done yet, but you have heard now.
Yes. And as always, as we mentioned several times, don't forget to drop us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. We do really appreciate it. It does help out. Check out our forums, forums.todayIfoundout.com. Anything else we need to plug or add or say?
I think that's good.
See you next week.